that's why I'm not afraid of algorithms, because algorithms, like, and I gave you this example in show prep. Client comes in and says, Brandon, here's my financial situation. Here's the problem that I need solved today. Right. I know a lot of the behaviors, a lot of the way this client's his brain works. I know their family dynamics. I know some of the past, some of the things that they're working on. I know all these like factors, but I also like understand the problem in a way that, first of all, I can give him advice. We can work on things to solve the problem. But again, in a complex adaptive system, what has worked for somebody very similar does not have to work. So now not only can I give him advice, I can monitor, watch the progress, measure things. And then if it starts to not work or starts to push him in a direction that he doesn't want to go,
right,
we can change, we can adapt, we can be very quick. All right. Welcome to another episode of Money Therapy. My name is Brandon Chasteen, and I'm one of your hosts. This is
Bill McGill,
and he's another host.
I am.
And he pulls his weight.
Thank you.
Or at least half of it.
I try.
I'm just kidding. We love having you, Bill. And we love you guys for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Guys, this episode, this thought, this idea, it's Bill's laughing at me, or was laughing at me, because I really nerded out over this thought. But it's not fun. And if you got the email Sunday, it starts out by saying this one is tough, mainly because it is exactly opposite of what human nature has programmed in us for survival.
Right.
We like to depend on things.
Yes.
We like to trust things. We like for things that are out there to be true. Right?
Yeah.
And frankly, not everything is true all the time.
That's correct.
Right? And we call, like, it was actually developed by some like logistics dude back in the mid 90s. This idea that's called the complex adaptive system. And since then, like, it's been used to explain things in like biology, and sure enough, eventually, like, even economists have embraced this theory. And it's taken a lot of shapes and a lot of different forms. But here's the bottom line, is there is this race to AI. Yeah. There's this race to incorporating algorithms into finance. There is this idea, this notion out there, like I read articles all the time on this theory that, hey, the human being financial advisor may not be something that we need forever. And I'm going to argue, and actually it's not just my argument, there's a lot of evidence to support that my job is not something that's going to be super easy to replace by an algorithm or by AI, because of this thing called the complex adaptive system, or the complex adaptive theory. And if you want to Google it, the Wikipedia article that comes up, it just gets me excited.
It's pretty loaded.
It's like, I mean, it's kind of maybe like the Matrix, or like, just some crazy thought. But here's the thing. Here's what it says or suggests, right? Is that the complex adaptive system means that variables and outcomes are never predictable and constantly changing. So expectation should be that if you repeat an action in a complex adaptive system, that the outcomes will not be the same. Or if they are, it's probably more of an anomaly than the difference. For example, A plus B equals C, right? A human being in real life, like, what we want to know is that A plus B equals C. And when we see it play out that way, and not when we see it once, but when we see it a couple times, we start to trust that A plus B equals C.
Every time.
So what happens when A plus C equals D? It really upsets us. No, that can't be true,
Yeah.
right? But in the complex adaptive system, what it's suggesting is that we should expect that. We should expect that A plus B equals C today. But tomorrow, A plus B can equal X. Not just X, but X to the ninth power,
Okay.
right? No two things are, they do not have to be the same the next time,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And not just that, but it goes even further to suggest that the variables themselves can change. So A plus B equals C, but next time A plus D equals C,
Yeah.
right? It's just this weird thought that the situation, the event, the micro, the macro, the interaction, the exchange point of all these things colliding creates a unique experience and a unique outcome. And this guy that made this said it's true in logistics. Biologists have said that's true in biology. And I'm suggesting that that's why we're all frustrated with money.
Okay.
That's why we're all frustrated oftentimes with our finances. Because Bill said that if I do A and B, then my outcome will be C. Because that's true for Bill. Bill's experienced it. Right?
Yeah. If I say, yeah, I saved, X amount per month for this many months. And so I wound up with this amount in my savings account. You may try and do the same thing, but something comes up and you don't save the same exact money.
Right. Or I think my brain goes to the thing of like social media, right? Set up your Amazon store. Set up these, like, do this, and you'll be a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
Like, make your first million in 6 months with $0.
Yeah.
Hey, here's the thing. The dude that's making that Instagram video or social media video might be telling you a 1,000% truth that happened for him when all of those variables and all of those things came together in his world.
Yeah.
But it could be absolutely not just different, but disastrous, totally opposite for you.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not afraid of algorithms, because algorithms, like, and I gave you this example in show prep. Client comes in and says, Brandon, here's my financial situation. Here's the problem that I need solved today.
Right.
Right? I know a lot of the behaviors, a lot of the way this client's his brain works. I know their family dynamics. I know some of the past, some of the things that they're working on. I know all these like factors. But I also like understand the problem in a way that, first of all, I can give him advice. We can work on things to solve the problem. But again, in a complex adaptive system, what has worked for somebody very similar does not have to work. So now not only can I give him advice, I can monitor, watch the progress, measure things. And then if it starts to not work or starts to push him in a direction that he doesn't want to go,
Right.
we can change, we can adapt, we can be very quick. An algorithm cannot do that in the same sense.
Yeah.
A programmed response would say, hey, A plus B equals C. Okay. I know this client's very, very good with managing his cash flow. He can save money when he needs to save. He can put money where he follows instruction very well. He's very motivated to accomplish things. He has a good support system. He has good income. His family, his wife's on board, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Okay. Flip the script. Now, all of a sudden, I have a different client come in with the exact same problem. But I know this client's past. I know their goals. I know all these things about them, and I know that they don't have a lot of family support, or their income isn't great, or they're not good at managing their cash flows. They're impulsive.
Right.
The solution for client A is not the same solution for client B.
Yeah.
That's the complex adaptive system. And you can't, like, what an algorithm would do is if client A and client B say, hey, this is the problem I'm trying to solve, it's A plus B equals C.
Yeah.
Algorithms don't work because real life is messy.
Yeah.
Real life changes, the variables changes. It is a complex adaptive system.
Yeah.
So don't rely on an algorithm's response. Always, always, always assume that what is worked for somebody else, it could be great advice, it could be honest advice, but great advice for someone else is not great advice for me. And even if it happens to be great advice for me, it doesn't have to be true that it's great advice for me right now.
Yeah.
Right? I tell clients that all the time. That's great advice. That's great advice for you. It's just not great advice for you right now.
And I think the variables arise because we are not algorithms and we are not computers, right? So I could give in that light, I could give the same advice to different people in very, very similar, almost identical situations. And one person could take that advice and run with it, and the other could feel maybe overwhelmed by it and doesn't want to do it. Or, I'm just thinking, an algorithm may say, okay, if you're, this age and you're making this amount of money, you need to save X amount to get to retirement, and you need to be in 100% stocks, right? And it could say that for two people, and one person could be totally okay with that. The other person could be having a heart attack every time they look at the TV and the market's going up and down, and then it gets too much and they pull out of the stock market, right? And if you sit down with us instead of an algorithm, we may say, hey, we only need to get you 7 or 8%, which means your ride's going to be a lot smoother, and I can keep that person in the market. There's a human element there that, you just can't. We're not math equations, and sometimes you can't solve that way.
I think back to this just came just to my mind as you were talking. I didn't even talk about this in show prep, but a trained sniper can zero in his rifle and try to shoot a 1,000-meter shot.
Sure.
Right? And he could be dead on, solidly hitting a bullseye. He could come out the next day, right? And the same sniper, the same rifle, the same zero, the same round, the same grain count, same everything, and he could be completely off.
Yeah.
And what would change things like wind, humidity, right? Visibility, all these things that can change in just a 24-hour period. And so, as a sniper, you typically have a spotter who's telling you how to adjust for windage, elevation, and all these things, right?
Sure.
You have someone there that's giving you constant data to say, hey, this stuff that I gave you yesterday was true.
Yeah.
And it was good. And you hit a bullseye.
Yeah.
Right? You were dead on. But now it's just enough has changed to where we have to recalibrate.
Right.
And the same solution yesterday is not the solution for today. It was perfect for you then, not perfect for you now.
Sure.
In fact, if you keep shooting this way, we're just going to waste all the ammo and never hit the target.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, and this has been so true. If we want to talk psychology of Brandon here, there's been so many, and I hope people can share this because I don't think it's just me, but I think of relationships in my life. I think of careers in the military that I've had, bosses and subordinates and friends and family, and just even silly things like my taste buds. My favorite foods growing up are not my favorite, except for fish sticks. I still love trashy old fish sticks, but for the most part, my palate has changed over time.
Yeah.
Right. So I could go sit down for a meal that I've loved for years.
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, that's just not doing it for me anymore. In fact, it's gross now.
Yeah.
Right. I have trusted in relationships. I have trusted in friendships. I have trusted in careers. I have trusted in things, just things that you should be able to depend on. But guess what? We live in a complex, adaptive system.
Yeah.
So what is true and what human nature tells us is we want to rely on this truth.
Yeah.
It does not necessarily mean that that's going to stay true.
Yeah.
And if we that's where people get hurt, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is we assume what's true today is going to be true forever.
Yeah.
And we find out, we get disappointed.
Yeah.
So I think the idea, this idea, we're talking about money and how financial advice for you is unique because you're unique and the outcomes you want are unique and everything that we're looking for is unique. But the reality is as human beings, we want to trust something. If I look and I scroll and I see this successful dude on a social platform saying, here's the secret, here's what I did,
Yeah.
we want to replicate and have the same outcome.
Yeah.
If I think that I can do A, B, and C and live a long, healthy life, I will be disappointed if that's not true.
Yeah.
We want to depend on things, but I'm just telling you, like, that's line number one. This is a hard topic because what we want, we don't get.
Yeah. To take a quick step back while you were talking, a Mark Twain quote popped into my head, and it's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
That's
And
exactly what we're
that's what we're talking about.
and it can be true for a time. Like it's not that we're foolish,
Right.
right? It's not that we're naive. And honestly, I've seen a lot of like bad people do bad things in my lifetime. But I still am maybe like an optimist, so to speak, that I hope it's just not optimism, but I think that most people are trying to be good and trying to do their best.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think there's an overweight of like bad people out there. Okay. So if someone comes in and says, hey, Bill, I got this for you. Like I got this idea and it changed my life and it can change yours. I believe that they believe that.
Sure.
What I have to do is understand like my emotions and my behavior and me just as a human being wants to believe that's true.
Yeah.
I'm ready to accept that as truth. I just have to have that like function in my brain to say, stop for a second.
Sure.
Stop for just a second here. What's true, that might be true for them. They might be telling you completely true. And it could be true for me too.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. And what am I risking at missing, losing, or whatever the case if this isn't true? So it's just an extra step
Yeah.
that we're adding into our own analysis is saying, stop for a second. Is it true for me? Is it good advice for me? And is it good advice for right now for me? I could tell you all day, hey, real estate's the way to go. Invest in real estate. I could tell you all day, hey, IRAs are the way to go. Invest in IRAs. I can tell you all these things. But if I am missing critical information about you and you don't even have a savings account right now with any money in it,
Yeah.
having assets for later in life is very, very crucial.
Yeah.
It's very good advice, right? Having somebody that knows a ton about real estate or any kind of investment, if I wanted to go buy a piece of art, sitting down and being like, hey, this is how I've grown my art collection and this is how I've made, increased my net worth, sitting down and learning that stuff. It's very important that we do that. But at the same time, they're giving advice based on their circumstance, what they went through and their outcomes. They don't know everything about me.
Right.
So part of that is they may not be lying. It could be good advice. It just may not be good advice for me and good advice for me right now. Two separate things.
Right.
The other part in all of this is understanding, and this is critical of even us, right? Our job. And I've said this before on the podcast, like financial plans. Financial plans are guesses.
Yeah.
And that is not comforting. People are like, wait a second, you charge for guessing? Kinda.
Yeah.
Right? Like but that's true for everything in life.
Yeah.
And in the complex adaptive system, like we are basically saying, hey, based on all these variables in the past and how these variables interact together,
Yeah.
we're using as much data and information as we can. But at the end of the day, we're making a best educated assumption or guess about how the collision of all these variables are going to come together in your world.
Sure.
Right. And so part of how do we survive? How do we navigate in the complex adaptive system is a 4-step process.
Yeah.
This isn't profound, right? The first thing we do is we assess our situation, right? Where am I right now? Where do I want to be? What kind of variables are going to have to come into play? What are the potential outcomes?
Does this advice that I'm getting from somebody else, is it right for me?
Especially if we're incorporating outside advice.
Correct. Yeah. Does this advice make sense in my life? And will this actually help me or hurt me? Just like we were talking.
What are the people that are telling me this advice? What do they know about my life? What are they missing?
Yep.
What kind of assumptions are they making about me? Is this true still? Does it have to be true? We were talking in short show prep. We got a money tree right over on the other side of our office, and I was like, Bill, like, I come into this office every day. I think those leaves are going to be green tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do they have to be?
No.
I don't know if they have to be. They definitely don't have to be. Does the sky have to be the same color every day? What if it's like some gas bubble just happened in our universe between us and the sun and it changed the color? Like, it would feel weird to walk out and see the sky a color we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And for it to stay that, but it doesn't have to be. And I think that that's just really, really important. Nothing has to be true. So part of that assessment, whether we're incorporating outside of, which if you're making big decisions, you should always incorporate outside device.
Yeah.
Advice, not device. Incorporate outside advice. But we assess it all, right? Then comes step number 2, guess.
Yep.
And I put that in there very intentionally.
Yeah.
We're making an educated guess.
Yep.
We're making the best guess we can. But it's at the end of the day, we're trying. And if you stick to your guns, bad things can happen. If you guess right, great.
Yeah.
But if you understand, hey, this isn't a fact, it's a guess. So that way, if we start to see that we're not progressing, we can just adjust. And that's why it's really good to incorporate like some sort of strategy, plan. That I always say, it's not about the plan, it's about the planning.
Yeah. If we fail to be open to adapting,
Right. That can be catastrophic.
or arrogance,
Right.
that could be.
And I've done that. I've done that so many times. I'm like, hey, client, nice to meet you. Here's a plan. Let's get to work. Go try this, this, and this. They come back and they're like, hey, did you try these things? I couldn't get around to it. Okay, let's adapt. Instead of trying this, this, and this, how about this? Can you just do this thing?
Yeah.
They come back and it's successful. Cool, that worked. Right? And we took one step forward, right? So step 1, assess. Step 2, guess. Step 3, act, right? Micro actions. And then step 4, repeat. OODA loop, right? Like we're just going to constantly cycle those 4 things in our life. And sometimes life is smooth and we only have to work through steps 1 through 4 like once every 6 months.
Yeah.
Other times we're spiraling, right? We're at a vulnerable point and we gotta cycle that every like 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Like, different times of life call for different things.
But one thing that jumped into my head, just to take a half step back, when we're talking about variables and outcomes and how the same variables can lead to different outcomes. One thing that jumped into my head was we talked about this on an earlier episode, which is you could take 2 people and say, hey, go run a mile, right? And running a mile is good. We can all pretty much agree running a mile is usually good for everybody. But if you've never run a mile before, there's a chance you get shin splints.
Right.
If you typically run 3 miles a day, 1 mile, you're going to have a great time, right? So 2 totally different outcomes. It's just something that popped into my head.
No, I think that's a great example of that. And at the end of the day, the point of all of this is to say, don't think that your life can be solved via an algorithm.
Right.
And that's why I'm pretty confident that I'm going to have a long career, because there's just so much complexity in the system that we operate in, the place that we function in, and I will say this, that I think that for some simple things, right, a calculator is all I need.
Sure.
Right, but I would say that the more grand or more complex that the problem, financial problem that I'm facing is, the more times you're going to come up in your brain with well, that depends.
Sure.
Right? That depends. And I say that to clients all the time. They're like, hey, I have this problem. Well, that really depends.
Yeah.
Let me ask you some questions.
Yeah.
Because there is
Let me assess where you are.
Exactly. So be flexible. Nothing has to be true. So we don't, and I think we can accept that as some sort of truth, that nothing has to stay true we could potentially I don't want to like create a bunch of jaded people out there, but like the idea that, we could be disappointed or we could be let down or we could be, all these things in life. I could really, really, really depend on this data set. I could depend on the idea that inflation is, 2.5 to 3%, but then we could see time periods where inflation's 9%.
Sure.
Okay, got it. Let's adapt. Let's figure this out. Interest rates, I could get used to the fact that they're 2.5 to 3%. Now all of a sudden they're 6 to 7%. Guess what? What 20 years ago? 80s?
Yeah.
No, man, that was like 50 years ago. Whoa.
Yeah.
Now it's 40. But
43.
yeah. But interest rates were, 20%, 15%, somewhere in that range.
18. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like your truth right now is not going to be true tomorrow. Maybe.
Yeah.
It's not going to be true in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think that that's just the most important thing that we can take away. You're unique. Your problem's unique. Your situation's unique. Your outcome's going to be unique. Trust that people try to give you good advice.
Yeah.
But if you're not part of something that is we're not just in the business of giving advice.
Sure.
We're in the business of giving advice, walking with you through it, assessing, adjusting, being adaptable, changing, right? That's why our plan is one piece of paper with a couple steps, because by the time you get done with those steps, enough has changed that we have to adapt it.
Yeah.
So
all there is to it.
that's what I got.
I like it.
It's fun. If you guys Google complex adaptive systems and nerd out on it like me, shoot me an email.
You may
and let
get
me know.
as much joy as Brandon.
Man, it's just that Wikipedia article. My brain was hurting a little bit. Like, man, that's so true about everything. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. If you enjoy it, let's grab some coffee or something soon. Shoot us an email. We'll get you the show notes on Sunday before the episode. bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Guys, everything that you need to know about Harpeth Wealth, about money therapy, about this episode or other episodes, check the show notes below. And
see you in the next one.
See you next week.
We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional, or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandon at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you back next week.